And I believe we're live.
I believe we are.
Yeah. Let me get. Let me take me back out for a minute.
Okay. Sorry, guys. We are getting a little bit of a late start this evening.
There we go.
Here we go.
Sorry, guys. It has been a day. It was my first day out in the yard.
It was.
Uh,
We bought a lot of block.
we only bought 40.
You did. You're expanding the garden, so more cinder block was needed.
Nope. Um, we're doing a lot of different topics tonight. So, we've got. Oh, I don't know. Legislatures are freaking stupid. Let's dig into that one. And then there's some other news things I want to talk about.
There we go. And hi, Ashley and Shannon. And yes, Sylvie, we're getting there.
And Kathy.
It's Kathy. Yay.
Yes. It is a good time to start gardening, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And, we do raised bed no-till, which I love. I don't have to freaking mess with it. Yeah, he came in.
Yes, basically. I've been playing all day. Like, we have new stuff coming.
Yes. He's updating the studio and redesigning some stuff in the studio.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I've been playing in here all evening.
Yep.
Yep. Oh, has it been beautiful in Greensboro? Oh.
It was beautiful here today. I'm sure it was beautiful in Greensboro. I love gardening. I love it. Y'all guys have seen me do a tour of the bed at the time that we opened it. That's somewhere on YouTube. And then I think you will probably get a video as after I get done dumping dirt, and then we'll talk about some of the things I did to fill in the dirt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Sullivy's asking, favorite soil?
Compost and peat moss.
Yes.
Yes. I like
Well, and then
in.
and you have compost to actually start your garden this year because we did that like through the winter.
We did do container compost, home compost, but I don't think I saved enough.
Oh, did it like pack down a lot?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I had wanted to film it all, and I'm like, no, we've got to get this done.
Oh, no, Kathy. I hate to hear you're in a major medical crisis, but I'm so glad you could join us this evening. But yeah, so Ashley wants hanging plants.
We tried those. We tried those. They unfortunately the straw. I thought it would be gorgeous coming up on our porch and seeing these beautiful hanging baskets of strawberries.
It didn't go well. Like there's foreshadowing there for a reason.
Yes.
Like those poor like it was a beautiful idea.
Yes.
Don't get me wrong, it was a beautiful idea, but unfortunately the way that our porch is, it just gets too much shade for that.
No,
So poor little
sun.
Oh, was it too much sun that killed them?
Yeah.
Too much shade. Okay.
No, it was too much sun. It cooked the poor things. Now I am thinking about planting some strawberry plants, and I also do my cucumbers because our raised beds are concrete cinder block. And then I plant into the cinder blocks. So I'm thinking strawberries hanging over the cinder blocks would be pretty and hopefully profitable. And then of course that's where my cucumbers go. I'm thinking about doing pumpkins this year. If I can get Vlad to leave them alone.
Yeah, it'd be nice if he would quit eating stuff.
Yeah. He's not going to be happy because I'm putting a fence around it.
Oh, well, neither will the bunny wabbit.
Right.
Because we have a bunny wabbit.
Yeah.
We have a little neighborhood bunny wabbit.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yep.
But
I'll
yeah.
let you guys know if I make Haas and Pfeffer.
Oh, well, now, fun question though. You did have some plants that you wintered, didn't you?
I,
Like, weren't there some carrots and stuff? Did we check on those today?
they are still growing. We've had carrots that wintered over. We had some forgotten onions pop up. And then we do have I believe this is the kaleidoscope pepper that wintered over and has done beautifully wintering over. It's actually expanded out very nicely. And of
Mm-hmm.
course, and then this year I'm going to expand into berries. We currently have 2 blackberry plants rising up, and we have a grapevine that's rising up. We have a lot of fencing in our backyard, so that's where that's going.
Oh, yeah. And the neighbor told you exactly where to plant them.
Well, that's because the neighbor would like to have some plants too, and it's one of those. And I really love our neighbor, so if he's watching, hi, because she does gardening too, and it's really fun looking at the 2 gardens. She does a different system. She still does the teal method, and seeing how it differs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, we could have gotten blackberries for free.
I would love blackberry plants. Definitely not a problem. I have a quarter of an acre, and we can do about 22 plants. So we'll take all the blackberry plants we can get.
Absolutely. Well, and it also helps out because the neighbor, like, if you like looked at our house, that's the one neighbor, and then one neighbor next to that is a beekeeper. Sorry, I was seeing the comment from Sullivan about marigolds and thyme are great insect control. They're also wonderful. Like, we kept those bees busy.
Yep.
Let me tell you, you could have just like NORADed them back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
Boom, boom.
Yep. And I was surprised. Clover. We got a lot of red clover from somewhere because it's all over the backyard. So that has kept them busy. But they will be happy. I hope they like our new roses. I did save the staples of those, so I could tell you guys what we put in this evening.
Yes.
Did you see me open up the blender?
Absolutely.
All right. I don't know how well the pictures will show, but we added a double delight.
Mm-hmm.
We added an includes. It's a nice deep red one. Emojune. I love that. That's going to be really pretty if it blooms. I'm sure it will. And then a CL summer snowball rose. I am still on the hunt for 3 other rose plants. And that is, I want a Kennedy rose, a Lincoln rose, and a Virginia rose. And then my rose garden will be completed.
There we go.
Yeah.
Then he gets the throne and starts talking about off with their heads.
Not really. I don't have time for that because then that means I have to go and dig another bed to plant the body for fertilizer.
Well, and Ashley has a quick question. When you're ready.
I'm ready.
All right, Ashley, 82696. Will I find my Kennepaws this year? Hopefully, even like because she spelled it out, like sounded it out. I think I got that right.
Yes, very much so. I think you're going to have to go to a smaller greenhouse to find it. Very much so.
Yes, she confirms I got it correct.
Yay! So I love roses. I love the smell of roses. I love the properties of roses in your ground, and they're just wonderful energy for the home. And of course, they catch things with their thorns. Love, love, love peace and roses.
Yes. Which, speaking of, like, we did run into a small problem last year because one of your dad's roses is really doing well. It's the oldest one, I believe.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it keeps filling out a little bigger every year.
Hmm.
And last year it kind of got to the point where it was catching people coming up onto the porch.
I call it a guard rose. It was perfect. It'll be great for selfies.
Well, and like we barely needed the ring
Yeah.
because everyone announced themselves, about 4 foot from the door
Hmm.
by going, "Ow!"
Yes.
We really should have saved images from that.
Well, there's video of it. It's like I'm always interested to see if the morning glories come back.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I'm hoping they do well.
Hmm.
That's sort of one of my favorites.
Hmm.
Like it's hard to like. It's such a simple plant,
Hmm.
but I like them.
Right.
Um, you know, I just do.
Right. And I find them amazing. I really like them. And those started from a little 50-cent packet at like Dollar General or whatever. And he just threw them in because we have terrible clay here. Um, Clay soil that's just crap, but they come back every year and it looks like an English cottage as long as we stay on top of it and twine it to the porch.
Hmm.
Otherwise, they just take over the porch. Like last year, they just wrapped around the chair because we were so pissed about the front yard.
Well, yeah, it was kind of funny on the chair though. It looked like it was trying to restrain the chair.
Hmm.
Like it got stuck against the railing because it had just wrapped perfectly around the legs and the arm.
Hmm.
They can be invasive.
Hmm.
Not nearly as bad as one ivy I had, which was absolutely gorgeous, but it actually ended up choking out two pine shrubs. Like it killed them.
Ah.
Um, that poor little ivy. Well, those poor little shrubs, but
Hmm.
the that ivy. It was a pink speckled ivy.
Hmm.
We ran into it the other day at Walmart.
Hmm.
They were selling it, and I was like, no, like, no, we're not doing that again. Because it actually, it's beautiful ground cover, but it grows with the intensity of kudzu. It really, truly does.
Right.
And it did. It not only like it started out in a little tiny pot, and it took over. Like it jumped the pot, it jumped the sidewalk to the other side of the house, and then proceeded to kill both shrubs and literally anything else it got near.
Right.
All righty, ready for Kathy?
Sure.
All righty. So Kathy, 72862. I really need to get my car running again. Is the alternator my last problem? I hope you know exactly what I need to replace so I'm not freaking stuck at home.
Let me take a look. Let me take a look. Now you're going to have to do the solenoid too, which is very common. The solenoid and the alternator, they can get pissy, especially in newer cars. You're going to have to replace it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, which a solenoid is this little metal box that goes between the battery and your power supply, and the alternator is the reverse of that. So it makes sense that both of them go out at the same time.
Typically.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it sounds like Kathy's having the kind of car luck I used to have, which is like you get the car and then it's like everything that can go wrong goes wrong.
Well, that's because your grandmother gave you brand new cars that she bought 3 years ago.
Oh, no, 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 no.
Miles an hour.
No, not 3. 3 would have been nice. 3 I could have gotten some life out of. Like she would hand me like 13-year-old cars with 30,000 miles on them.
Mm-hmm.
Original brakes, original battery, original tires, original.
Uh-huh.
And it's like the minute you get on the road, it's, it's like the engine actually warms up. It's like There goes the belts, there goes the hoses, there goes the tires, there goes the brakes, there goes the
All right. All right, guys, we're going to try to get through this conversation about what our lovely state representatives are doing without
Mhm.
losing temper. Go for the story.
Oh, which one? Like they've done so much this week. I'm hoping we're talking about the unfortunate House movement, which
Uh-huh.
was the transgender athlete bill,
Mm-hmm.
which basically bans, in a sense, transgender athletes.
Right.
As in, you will no longer, if this passes the Senate, no longer be able to participate in school sports as anything other than the sex on your birth certificate at the time of your birth, which is a very careful wording because while some people who transition are able to get a replacement birth certificate to kind of fix the identity issues,
Mm-hmm.
um, there's many who don't. This means it doesn't even matter. So even if you get the corrected birth certificate with your, preferred sex listing, that's not going to happen. And it actually, if your birth certificate does not have a sex listed, it's going to effectively put you in the position of being evaluated by a medical professional.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
mouthful.
Well, not only that, but that's bull. That's so much
Oh,
bullshit. We have had this. Um,
it's two different topics because there's gender and then there's sex and genitalia,
right.
and those are still two separate categories. Because ultimately you end up with six common karyotypes. Everything from X to XX to XY to XYY to XXY, and I believe the last one is XXXY. And those are more common than you think. There are a lot of people on this planet who think they are XX or XY that are not.
Mm-hmm.
Because I did some estimation earlier today, and in a state with West Virginia, 1.79, I believe it is, or 1.729 million people, we are effectively talking about a total possible, and this is on the high end. So there's like on each of the non XXXYs, they range from a 1 in 1,000 to a 1 in 50,000, and these are on the high end. Likelihood of happening. So when when you do the math on the outside numbers, as in the high end, like if you go with the like the higher lightning strike, um, it works out to roughly 3,000 and some odd people in the state of West Virginia alone
Mm-hmm.
that are potentially non XY or XX. Like, you're talking about a lot of people whose sex is already misclassified. Then you get into the topic of gender, which has nothing to do with genitalia.
Right.
Uh, and that's the ultimate problem in the state of West Virginia.
Well, the ultimate problem in the state of West Virginia is our politicians are so stupid they do not understand all this.
Mm-hmm.
Even that there has been countless numbers of parents from across the United States who have spoke at our federal Congress, spoke at our federal um, places, Senate, community meetings, all this. We have a high population of child suicide rates, and they want to sit here and debate what was it, 4 seasons ago? Which bathroom to use? Now they're depending on what your after school activities are. When we have roads that have holes in them, we have bridges that are collapsing in this state, we have an infrastructure problem. We have problems with jobs. We have a pandemic.
But for their voting constituency, i.e., the people who overwhelmingly put them in office, these are one, easy wins and high priorities, and, it's pandering. Point blank, plain and simple pandering.
Well, not only that, but it's actually probably going against the federal government since this, sex and gender was included in Title IX.
Oh, and Solvey asked the question, gender is a huge question right now. How can we support everyone? There's kind of... Here's your non-answer. You support everyone by supporting everyone. Just, you have to let go of binary gender concepts. He, him, she, her, they, them. It's not hard. If you can figure out someone changed their name when they got married, you can work your way through a friend transitions from, John to Kim.
Right.
Honestly, it's on the support side, it is more about allowing people to be. Just, that's it. Just allow people to be.
Right.
If they have preferred pronouns, use them. If, they're telling you their name has changed, use it.
Right.
Like, just don't dead name them. Because that's just cruel. Because ultimately it's very much the same as, but to a much greater extent, as having that unfortunate nickname from high school that you never want to hear again. Whatever that may be. But to a much greater degree.
Right. And, and it's very interesting. There's very few transgenders that take on sports. Normally it's football, which there isn't girls football here. There's normally only guys football here. Although I did see that a school is starting a girls rugby team. That was interesting.
Yeah. Well, now there is one exception to this law, which is co-ed sports.
Right.
In which that doesn't apply. But it basically sounds like it's more about the boys' club and keeping, basically protecting the boys' club.
Right.
Or more importantly, on the, like girls softball, girls basketball side, protecting the girls.
Right.
Which ultimately starts with a very broken belief of how this works. The world and everything in it. But there's also the reality that one of the House representatives that spoke on this bill ultimately brought this home with religion in the most negative way ever. Is taking a lot of flack for that. Because his actual statement was, "My God doesn't make mistakes. If you're born a boy, you're male until you die. If you are born female, you're a female until you die." And yeah, actually, the worst possible statement there, because again, it's putting religion to a topic where religion need not apply. Hi, can West Virginia just go any harder on this? We're gonna, glue together church and state. Yeah, religion and questioning. That sounds loaded. I'll give you that one. It is. It was a bad weapon to try to pick up,
Mhm.
especially in this debate. Now, the fun thing on West Virginia, though, just real quick, I know you've got something, but just real quick, the fun thing on West Virginia is we have more transgender people per capita than anywhere else in the United States.
Mhm. Because we can leave people alone. We don't care. Now, I wanted you to read Scott Ross's comment here.
Okay, the state of West Virginia will only amend a birth certificate. They put a line through the original name and sex. Okay, so, well, I mean, I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but at least there's that much. At least there's that much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, birth certificates in the state of West Virginia is a damn nightmare. A damn nightmare.
That they are.
Yeah, but this is ridiculous. We have other pressing issues in this state.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, than to be messing with children who want to play sports, but also feels that they're a different gender, is exploring a different gender, is a different gender.
Or doesn't want a gender label.
Exactly.
More importantly, because we have people who are non-binary, who are pangender, who are like there's a lot of options there. And ultimately we're having a conversation that has more to do with sex than it does gender. But we're getting stuck in trying to have this conversation with people who run the concept together. That if you're born with a penis, you're raised as a male, and this is the only option you have. So enjoy your toxic masculinity because we're going to sit here and reinforce it all the way through your life. Or conversely, if you're born with a vagina, then you're going to, get stuck with a female label and you are going to live that nightmare. It is going to be forced upon you. You will live as a woman for all of your days, which is ridiculous.
Right.
It just point blank, it's ridiculous. It's not scientifically accurate. It's not historically accurate. And even to some degree within Christianity, it's not even all that accurate. Like there's some scriptures there that come up.
They only come up if they use the 1946 version. Now, if they use the version before 1946, the 1832 version, we'll go with the original King James version. They have a problem because it's not in there anywhere. Sexual identity, sexual relations were not introduced to 1946 when they replaced the word pedophile with other words to fill in blanks, which I find interesting. Scott Ross, I understand that. I have spent 10 years trying to fix a problem with mine that a clerk done.
Yeah. And talking about his birth certificate specifically.
Yeah.
And this has not been easy. Because there are situations, or at least there used to be, in which it wasn't that a birth certificate was amended, it was that his original was nullified and was destroyed.
Yeah.
Talk about a nightmare. Because the document or the birth certificate that replaced it ended up having errors. Which there was one attempt to correct, and that made everything even worse.
Right.
So yeah, it's absolutely insane.
It's insane. And we live in such a draconian system now. Before 9/11, there weren't problems like this. Before 9/11, there weren't issues. After 9/11 and that Patriot bill that needs to be removed, notice it had nothing to do with patriotism. began creating multiple issues for a lot of people. And these are roots that have now grown 10 years, 12 years, 15 years into our society that now we're having to fight to get fixed. And our state legislators, if you are in the state of West Virginia, you're an elected legislator, I don't care where you're at on the side of this bill, be calling them and telling them we've got other things to be doing.
Oh, absolutely. And actually, let me go ahead and ask for an invisible refill. So yeah, it's
Double that if you would.
Oh, we need 2 refills. So yeah, it's a complicated topic, and I get that, and it's one that some people do really struggle with, not just from the position of transitioning, but as trying to be, appropriately supportive.
Mm-hmm.
That if you have been stuck in the gender binary world all of your life, it is a challenge to sit there and go, wait, there's options. Because gender binary has basically taught you there's only 2, and basically both of them suck.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start looking through history, and you start finding out that no, this is a newer concept. It's sort of like when people say, "In God we trust," has always been on our money. Not prior to 1957, it wasn't.
Yeah.
That it's kind of in the same situation.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you look at it, a lot of this has to do with, I don't want to call it quite post 9/11, but there was a shift socially in the importance of names and identification and birth certificates and the prevalence of their use. Once upon a time, you could skip town and start a new life.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people used to do that.
And still do. Now they just have to pay $2,500 to start that new life. And then they have to go back and fight it if you got a clerk that doesn't like a judge and they just want to fuck around with shit.
Well, yeah, but then there's also the situation there that if you are in a situation in which you basically skip town and you don't go the legal route, you now have a whole other list of charges. Because we have tied everything so tightly to, name, social, date of birth, birth certificate, all these supporting documents, that if you falsify any of those or misrepresent any of those, or do anything to those, you can end up with a massive series of problems. I personally say that my grandmother got lucky that a choice she made in order to get married didn't happen, roughly 80 years later, or well, probably closer to 60 years later. Because my grandmother actually, in order to get married, altered her birth certificate and changed the year. So she didn't require a parent's signature.
Right. But these were commonality things. There's commonality of that. But what was the grace there is that altered birth certificate didn't become her new birth certificate.
No, it didn't. Thankfully, there was, she altered a physical paper document. And went to get married. Technically out of state, just barely. Back in the day, well, and I think it still is. I think Virginia is kind of an easy marriage state.
It is.
It's like you just kind of show up, and as long as you have all the right paperwork, it's kind of like,
Here you
Yeah, here you go.
go.
So that's what she did all the way back in the 1930s. Is she made a minor change, sitting there gently with a pencil or a pencil eraser, to alter a year.
Hmm.
And in doing so, she was able to get married. Not that she was severely underage. It was kind of one of those wait a few months and it'll all take care of itself. But yeah, it could have been a much larger mess.
Right. Yeah. But this was larger. These were common practices. Um,
Mhm.
during the time of that, and all the way up. I mean, we can go through history and tackle this about birth
Mhm.
certificates and name changes, and back in the 1800s, that was no big deal. And then we have cultural problems now, where culturally is one name, legally is another name. The English or legal name, and you have to navigate all these things, and it's like, government, get out of it. As long as you get your money and you're doing your job and you're not killing anybody, you haven't committed a crime anywhere, what's the problem?
Mhm.
1945, having trouble getting visas? Yeah. 1957, having trouble um, getting visas, getting paperwork, having places that burn down that no longer have things. Because if you were an army, uh, what I call army brat, or any branch of service, they lost records of children
Mhm.
in a fire. There is no record of the service record. If the child was born on base, it would have been recorded on base. All that.
Yeah. Well, and mom actually went through that with her birth certificate.
Hmm.
And again, thankfully, many decades before, it was less of an issue. She, had to get, I believe it was two affidavits from people who had known her for, I forget how many years,
Hmm.
that she was who she said she was, because the county that she was born in, their vital statistics went up in a fire.
Hmm.
And my mother's birth certificate original was lost in that.
Right. Well, and it's not, our original birth certificates
Hmm.
used to be stored at the hospital of birth. This is why you had to know where you were born at.
Hmm.
They're not keeping them anymore.
No.
It's seen as just a medical record for them, and after 20 years, they destroy that.
Well, and moreover, like that's still the originating form, not the one that the state actually filed. So I know that there can be some issues.
Yeah.
Like they'll accept that if there's a problem.
No,
In terms of, well, I thought there was that.
no, the one with the little foot, the little footy, and the little
No,
hand.
no, no, no.
Oh,
Not that one. There's the
okay.
actual form they send to the state. Like that's just a cute little wall hanging.
Mm-hmm.
And granted, I got a driver's license with that. I technically got two driver's licenses with that.
Mm-hmm.
And was enrolled in college with that, and high
Mm-hmm.
school, and junior high, and elementary, and
Mm-hmm.
two different school systems.
Mm-hmm.
Like no one, the 80s, the 90s, and pre 9/11, no one had a problem with the little footy birth certificate.
Right.
The first time I ran into a problem was 2010 when I moved back to West Virginia, and I had to, for the first time in my life, go to the courthouse and get the official certified crimped
Mm-hmm.
birth certificate
Mm-hmm.
before I could regain my West Virginia driver's license.
Yeah, Sullivan. Yeah, they're going to have it, and it's going to be probably every time they need one. So please get get a firebox, get a Bible, get a whatever, and just store every piece of paper related to their identity
Mhm.
in that.
Oh, absolutely. Like, and it's amazing the problems you can end up going through in life if you lose, like, because the other fun parts you can run into, and my dad had a renter back, many years ago. who had, through a situation of unfortunate events, lost his driver's license, birth certificate, and his social security card. That is called the trifecta of screwed. Because you start running into problems trying to replace a birth certificate without photo identification. You have problems replacing a social security card without a birth certificate and photo identification. And you have problems getting photo identification if you don't have a social security card and a birth certificate. And I laugh not because I find the situation funny; it was horrible for him. But the reality of like trying to get someone, get that situation resolved for someone is next to impossible. You can't do one without the other. You're sitting here in stuck.
Right.
And that was also part of the conversation we had with Donna, with Appalachian Pagan Ministries.
Right.
And it's a situation that a lot of inmates face.
Right.
Is that if they've been in prison for 5, 10, 20, 30 years, a lot of these things were not protected. When they went into custody, people died, things got, thrown in a dumpster, people, forgot to pay rents on storage buildings, whatever. They're lacking all these documents, despite the fact that they're in a prison system.
Right. Now, I'm glad that they're all in a fireproof thing. This is what I would recommend after having so much trouble out of mine. Get them a passport. I don't care if they never plan to travel out of the country in their life. The Trump document, meaning the document that trumps everything, is a passport.
Yeah. That it does. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think you're ready for Madison.
Yes, the cards are all heated up and ready to go.
All right. So Madison, 12/15/2001. Hey, Aeson, why has Darwin not reached out to me since our date yesterday? Did I scare him off?
Let's take a look here. I don't think you scared him off at all, honey. I, however, feel like that traditional vibe has kicked in on him. And with that, you may wait 2 to 3 days before you hear from him. He's getting involved here. He liked the date. He had a fun time. I feel like that it was a good date, but I feel like he's just waiting. Hi, Brenda.
Hey, Brenda. And I will say on follow-up to your comment about fireproof safes, if you know a graduating senior, as in if they're not 18 yet, they're getting ready to turn 18, and you're trying to figure out what to buy them as a gift, a stupid fireproof hand safe is probably the smartest thing anyone will ever get as a gift. Especially at that age when you start needing to keep up with your own crap. It'll save you a lot of time, effort, energy, and money. I know my grandmother was floored when I asked for one for my 18th birthday. Or graduation gift. I can't remember which one I asked for it for. But yeah, I like saw down the road that I'm going to have to keep up with this stuff. And no, I don't want to leave it at home and have to drive to West Virginia every friggin' time I need something.
Right.
Granted, great way to see your kids, but
right. Well, and I'm glad they already have passports because yes, financially it'll be difficult, but there are times when you have to prove identity, and driver's license won't do, credit card won't do. You have to have a birth certificate. If there's a problem with a birth certificate, you have to use your passport. And it will trump everything. And they'll go, "Oh, you can't do that." Yes, I can. That is a federal identification.
That it is. And I will point out that financial aid, I don't think is easy for anyone. Like it's always a nightmare. But that being said, the other thing I wanted to mention was I'm just curious, because we've sat here and had the in-depth conversation about all the problems that like our post 9/11 world has created and the importance of these documents. What I've noticed, at least in West Virginia, is that if you've been married and had a legal name change, and you've gotten divorced, and you now have another legal name change, I'm wondering what effect that's going to eventually have on spouses changing name with marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Whether we're about to see the death of that just because we've created such a complication and such an expense for people. Because I know I do have a family member that, she's been married for a little while now, and she just kind of threw her hands in the air on changing her name again because it was hard enough. It was easy when she got married the first time. It was a little difficult when she got divorced the first time. And when she remarried, she was like, I'm done.
Right.
I'm not interested. Like, I can't afford this. It's too much in the butt. I got to go find all this crap. I've moved so many times. This is ridiculous.
Right. It's every 9 to 10 years in the United States. That will be different there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And another thing, if you're going to do a passport and the importance of getting one, now with kids, it's a little different. I think those expire faster just because kids age, and change so much.
Right.
But now the important thing to always keep in mind with a passport is never, ever, ever think that you are going to plan a trip that is less than, a year away and go apply for a passport. Because I will guarantee you, you will at least be down to the wire, if not have to cancel your trip. Oh, yeah. Ashley saying, I changed my name once. That was a hassle.
And, and this is the insanity that goes on. Scott Ross's wife follows through this. She has to have all 3 marriage certificates, a birth certificate, 2 copies of divorce papers. And if there's any other legal changes she has to do to that, it's a file box this thick. And it's like every time anything happens, you have to have this whole file box to prove who you are. And it's like, didn't you get this last time? Didn't you get this last time? Well, we have to scan it again. We have to scan it again. I'm sure she's not happy being reminded of her ex-husband's every time she has to hand over this packet.
Yeah.
Or crap.
Well, now, meanwhile, the thing I really have always questioned and wanted, I really should have a moment at the DMV someday. But the thing that got me when I moved back to West Virginia was when I originally got my state of West Virginia license, they were just implementing the fingerprint option. That you could connect your fingerprint to your license.
Right.
And the one thing that got me is what happened to that.
Right.
Because I was like, wouldn't that just be the easier solution? Is just scan my fingerprint. Like, how much could my fingerprint have changed in a decade? Well, 12 years, but roughly at that point. How much could it have changed?
Right.
Like, shouldn't it, what was the point of that? Like, it never got used.
Right.
Like, did we just throw fingerprints into, the ether? Did we put it in some state crime database? Like, what did we do with that?
Well, I remember when I got my second driver's license, I done the fingerprint thing. And the situation still doesn't help. Didn't help, didn't use. I don't know what they've done with it. I don't know why they've used it. Never put it into action. It was one of those great ideas. It's like the True ID is a great idea.
Well, I mean, I know my thought when I did it was, well, I can't ever commit a felony now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I thought about it afterwards. I was like, sure.
Mm-hmm.
And slammed my finger down. And then I thought about it later. I was like, well, I can't ever commit a felony.
Right.
Like, I have to wear gloves.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like it just disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't understand that part. That's where I'm just lost on it. Like, what happened? What was the deal?
Right. It's insane.
Oh, it would be glorious to have these documents cloud accessible. Like, but then again comes the question is what happens when,
Mm-hmm.
because it'll happen.
Right.
Someone screws up and say an entire state vital statistics database gets copied.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you fix that? Because that's, potentially millions of people's information.
Mm-hmm.
Floating around online for anyone, anywhere.
And at any time.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think that was like Ashley's follow-up was, but people are too sketchy for that. Yeah, basically. And that makes me sad. Can I just point out as an IT person, that makes me sad.
Right.
Because, and I've gotten into this on previous shows. I saw this amazing future back in the 90s in which technology was going to help people and bring everyone together, and it was going to make all of our lives easier. And, I just envision this idea of this totally connected, completely digital, just wonderful world in which our medical records were at our own and our doctor's fingertips, where, our vital records were at our own and, anywhere we needed to be, fingertips. Like, I imagine that one day we would not even have a driver's license, or it would be the most techy thing ever.
Mm-hmm.
That sort of like the smart business cards are now, that you can tap and share your information. Like, I thought that's where we were headed. I'm still kind of horrified. That is not what happened.
Right. Still, it's like what?
Oh,
yeah, that, the draconianism of identity, the draconianism that we're currently facing in this country. Mm-hmm. Now, let's look at a different country.
Okay.
One that people kind of look down upon, India. They have for centuries had 4 identities, 4 different genders.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah.
Granted, they have larger solar power usage. Why are we? That's what I don't get. They always say America's the richest, America's this, America's that, America's the greatest.
No, we're not. Like, sorry, did anyone see, well, granted, I still need to see the movie, but there's a lovely clip of a movie. I believe it's Newsroom, or I think it's Newsroom, in which one of the anchors goes off in the middle of a political debate about, no, we're not the greatest country. We're not.
Right.
Like, if you want to fix a problem, admit you have one.
Mm-hmm.
And what we mostly have is a giant problem with admitting that we have a problem.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Right. But with India, though, it's apparently not that hard to handle the concept of multiple, identities and multiple genders.
Mm-hmm.
Why is the rest of the world why, more importantly, is the U.S. making this hard? Forget the rest of the world. but then again, we are kind of sitting here still making the concept of universal healthcare sound like it's going to be Russia takes over.
Yes.
So yeah, no.
Yeah. I'm so tired of them using that. Russia takes over. No, Russia only influences our elections when Grand Poobah is there. All right. So what's next on your hot take? And then I've got a story I'm kind of happy to see posted by the BBC.
Oh gosh, I'm trying to think. I did have one. I had it ready. Let me look back real quick because we always share those.
Yes.
So we do want to make sure we remember everything going on.
Well,
Oh gosh, I did not share that. Huh. Okay. Oh, yours looks great. Let's go ahead and jump into that.
all right. Do the hot take, darling. Open it up. Tell us about it.
Oh, okay. On the ethical non-monogamy.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know that I have a hot take other than
I get to give the hot take. You get to read the news article.
Oh, I get to read the news article. Okay. So yeah, multi-partner relationships are on the rise and finding their way into the mainstream. Could this new exposure change the way we look at sex and families? And that's sexual activity, not just
Gender.
Anywho. So yeah, wow. So yes, this is the three guys who adopted a kid
And a puppy at the
and a
same
puppy.
time.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But no, that they which made them the first polyamorous throuple on a birth certificate.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, which is awesome.
Yes.
And again, kind of moves past this idea, which like help me out. Like, didn't we all sit around in like the early '90s? Was it watching My Three Dads?
Yeah. At least I thought so.
How is this hard for us? Like, or there was a whole movie that it was a great comedy.
Mm-hmm.
It may have even had the same name, but yeah, it's a great like movie even.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Why does everyone have a problem?
Well, they have a problem because it doesn't fit into their marketing construction. This is why I'm really happy to see this out of BBC. This is the British Broadcasting. Multiple partners are becoming a thing. Now, granted, here's the thing to remember. This is BBC. This is, three parents on the same birth certificate. Where we're having in Florida and in Arkansas right now, two dads, one of them has to come off the birth certificate.
Mm-hmm. Well, and which is, a problem in and of itself. Ashley brings up, however, sister wives, and that concept. Okay. I don't know that's the best introductory to polyamory that anyone could have. That's a little different.
Yeah, you have to go to her next comment then.
Oh, yeah.
Two-part comment, dear.
And then custody CPS gets even messier.
Yes, it does. It gets even messier. It gets even worse. This is why a lot of poly couples, couple, throuple, cube, hexagram, all that, have a lot of major problems. There were actually some documentaries other than Sister Wives that shows like there are households that are being taught the way I was taught. CPS, you don't talk to. You don't share this. You don't share that because of so many things.
Well, and then additionally with you, the double whammy of being pagan.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like you throw that 1-2 combo at him, and it's kind of like, well, nice talking to you today.
Right.
And we've known people go through that.
Yeah, we've had to bring in Lady Liberty into the state of West Virginia to deal with CPS to explain that being that the mother or father or mother and father are witches doesn't mean they're going to boil the baby. This was a CPS complaint that I had to go on evident record to deal with.
Yeah.
State of West Virginia, real smart sometimes, I'm telling you. But I love that they were able to get all three of the names on the birth certificate. They were able to get everything organized out. I think that we'll see more poly couples on TV, on camera, in the news, writing, talking? Yes. Now, I hope that we see a lot more of real life coming to television, not reality TV, real life.
Well, but that's the problem. And that's where we've gotten, I think that's where everything gets stuck at is, honestly, as a nation, we're kind of addicted to like My Strange Obsession.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're addicted to reality television, Real Housewives of like Orange County, and we are addicted to drama.
Yep.
And that seems to be the selling point.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's sort of like I always make the reference to it's like a gay pride parade.
Mm-hmm.
Is the news crews only focus on the half naked dudes or more than half naked on the float and the drag queens. Like that's it. Like that's the whole, like that's all you see. You don't see the doctors, the lawyers, and the accountants in the back.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see people that I would be friends with, I would play golf with, I would work with. But it's kind of the thing is we're addicted to this idea of sensationalism.
Right, but those floats and those drag queens holding those signs have done so much, and that's how we get our issues in front of the Joe and Q public. And we got to look at and everyone likes to beat up Ellen right now. Gets on my last nerve. She has done so much for gay rights from her shows. We like to go and beat people up that are doing different things. But, her coming out was a major thing. And her wonderful wife, and, it was such a shock. And I can remember it being on CNN for days and conversations for days. But these are things that shock and awe. Yeah, that's how you get people to pay attention.
Well, it is, but also at the same time, it creates that view of difference. Which, honestly, if you want to go backwards a good bit, a large part of what created a problem in the first place was Boys Beware, which was a 1950s era PSA film that was shown all over our education system, that warned men about the dangers of homosexuals. That kind of leads into PSA films in general and the problems that, say, the Baptist convention created with Reefer Madness.
Right.
And its effect on drug policy for the last, near 100 years? So the fact that we're 70 plus years on from, Boys Beware, and we're still struggling to get this, to uncouple those thoughts of, gay man and, pedophile. And no, crowbar of separation, massive one. But it immediately, I don't want to say resonated with people, but stuck with them.
Right.
It just stuck with them. It was a new group to hate.
Right.
And that's my problem with a lot of drama being very careful. I don't have a problem with dramas. I have a problem with drama inspired television that is totally about creating drama, where
Mhm.
drama need not, like, when you edit, people around, or counsel them in a way to create, added drama. That's where I
Right.
have.
And and it's already been documented. You brought up, Reefer Madness. That whole PSA,
Mm-hmm.
whole theory was created by the paper industry.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all want to know why, marijuana is now being looked for medical reasons and recreation reasons? We got hemp back, and hemp's doing this, and hemp can be used for this. It's the paper industry. The
Mm-hmm.
newspaper companies, the book companies have gone down to declining, because, we now read our news online. We now read our books online or buy it on our phone or whatever. So they've
Mm-hmm.
lost power in this.
Yeah.
Point.
Well, and in addition, our fears of sustainability,
Mm-hmm.
that we cannot keep using paper.
Right.
We cannot, like, even at the reduced consumption, we're still cutting down more trees than we can, or harvesting more trees than we can replace.
Right.
And we were doing it for ever.
Mm-hmm.
And whereas, hemp is a very sustainable product.
Right.
It grows like wildfire.
Yes. And it can
It's a
be used
very
for
happy
rope. It can be used for everything else. All right. So if you guys are interested in polyamory, there are some lovely books out there. Of course, I think The Ethical Slut should be read by everybody because it covers a lot of self-discovery, self-identity, and covers most of the topics we've talked here tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful book. The book More Than Two is very controversial. I wouldn't recommend it. It's going to cause problems if you're already in poly. If you're even looking at poly, it does a whole construct, and I don't recommend it. Ethical Slut, wonderful book. But I think we're going to see more of it on TV in a good light. Sister Wives done a lot of things. They've covered a lot of subjects, a lot of problems. They've gone through a lot of problems.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, is there better polyamory TV movies?
Trying to think. There's a lot of subtlety ones.
Mm-hmm. Well, now German films are actually a lot more open.
Yeah.
Like, granted, subtitles.
Or
Subtitle.
dubbing.
But and speaking of, there actually is a movie, and if I remember correctly, the title is either XYY or XXY.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot remember off the top of my head. And it's actually a very good movie.
Mm-hmm.
About a couple, their relationship, and, well, I'll let you see the movie because otherwise it gives away the plot. But basically, they end up in a polyamorous relationship with a third person. So yeah, it's a great movie. I believe that's the title. I'll double check that, and if I'm wrong, we'll update it, of course.
Right.
But, yeah.
Actually, I will have to get back to you on that, and here's why. Aeson doesn't remember titles. He also doesn't know actors and stars until he looks at pictures, and they got to be ones he actually cares. Like if Vivian Fox, I can pick her out of a lineup.
Mm-hmm.
But the dude that I like on the show about Earth being the third planet from the sun, or the guy I listen to go to sleep because his voice is just like this, and he will knock me out in 5 seconds. I don't know their names too. Salvi, I'm going to debate you on this one. Monogamy, and there are people that are monogamous. There are people that are polyamorous. There are people that are anywhere on that gray spectrum. But it's polyamory, STI, STD conversations happen more often than monogamous ones. Because when you're having to talk and actually share, this is where it is, this is my testing, this is my fluid bond, this is who I fluid bonded with, and these are the people that they fluid bonded with, and here's all that. It's a lot more into that.
Absolutely. And it's probably an important thing to point out. There's monogamous and there's monogamish.
Yep.
And there's also serial monogamy.
Mm-hmm.
They're three very different concepts. And just to fracture some brains, unless you went from virgin to married and never had another sexual partner and do so until the day both of you die, you're at best serially monogamous. As in, you are monogamous with this partner, and then you are monogamous with that partner, and that's serial monogamy.
Right.
And then there's monogamish, which happens, in which you think you're monogamous, or your partner thinks you're monogamous, that is your relationship, and then you later find out that one or both of you were not so monogamous. And in general, cheating spouses are less likely to, and there are studies on this, are less likely to use condoms, and they are also, one, for obvious reasons, not going to tell you about the additional partner they had sex with, but also are unlikely to discuss with each other their sexual health. So this is how you end up with 85-year-olds finding out that they have syphilis.
Yeah.
Because no one talked about STDs. They're in a monogamous relationship. Therefore, their doctor doesn't prompt them to get STD testing. Basically, everyone's running on an assumption that they're clean.
Mm-hmm.
And I put clean in quotes because you're not dirty because you have an STD.
Right. The weird part of our generation is now we have teenagers and older than teenagers, because believe me, I've had to have the conversation about, I don't care who you dated, I don't care what you're doing, with 26-year-olds. You need your testing.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're having to have it with our mothers and our grandparents, and they're like, we're not pregnant. And it's like, no, but you're dating this dude, and you dated this dude here, and you dated that dude, and I don't care how old you are, I know you're up to something. So here's the new way you need to go do this. And by the way, here's a note card. Take this to your doctor, tell him you want this blood work. Because you know where the greatest STI, STD segment of the population is? Not teenagers, not 20-somethings, not 30-somethings, not 40-somethings. No. It's our population that is 70 and above.
Mm-hmm. Mostly because you get to the age in which you can't get pregnant, and your last dating experience may have been 30 to 40 years before. You tend to forget some things, and you also tend to have some issues being open and forthright about sex, sexuality, and sexual pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
That can be a very hard conversation for a lot of people to have. Not saying it's super easy for people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, or 60s. But right now, especially people 70 and over do have a lot of problems with that.
Right.
Then you have the additional issues of dementia, which can be both, disinhibiting, as well as will more than likely lead to you being put into a nursing home. And that can be an interesting scenario in which you have people with dementia that are disinhibited, that are still sexually functioning, and again, disinhibited, having sex. That, yeah, before the dementia, she may have been your cookie baking grandma, but,
Now
turns
she's a
out,
rolling 20-year-old with 4 different boyfriends.
at least in her mind.
Yep. So have these conversations. Write down notes, the same as you would send notes with your child. If you're in a state where your child can actually have free conversation with their doctors, for them to have a conversation with their doctor.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So also, I want to kind of talk about this, and this is one of those things that's like, oh dear gods, here we go.
Mm-hmm.
We have a border crisis. Why do we have a border crisis? We're America. We're going to have a border crisis because people want to get into America, and the borders are somewhat more open or somewhat closed, and there's war and famine, and everyone tearing themselves up. And then you turn around and we go from an administration that treated children like pound puppies
Mm-hmm.
and put them in cages to going to an administration that's having to make choices and deal with not only an influx, but also taking care of the pound to begin with. And then we have news media and people like Ted Cruz, who doesn't even respect reporters enough to put on a mask, and apparently didn't read, any of the documentation on the vaccine and how he could still be carrying the vaccine and passing it on to said reporters that haven't been allowed to take the vaccine yet. But he got it because he's a senator and that's a government official. Making waves and acting like, oh, Biden took office and he's supposed to magically snap together and fix 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And yeah.
I will say I do appreciate the fact that Biden has taken a stance against for-profit incarceration.
Right.
Which was one of the topics I meant to get into and had forgotten about.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was one that recently applied to, I believe, Youngstown, Ohio,
mm-hmm.
In which the contract for Civic Corps for a federal detention center was not renewed, which has been met with like a double reaction.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is like, hallelujah, because apparently there are a lot of horror stories out of that detention facility.
Mm-hmm.
But then additionally, there's now a problem in which they're not ready to handle that, handle the shutdown of that facility or the transition of that facility out of Civic Corps, their ownership and management. So, yeah.
Yeah.
On the upside, it's the beginning, and I hope, the beginning of the end for-profit incarceration, which ultimately forces, worse, like mandatory minimums, worse policing, nickel and dime policing, and overcharging. Right. Which is basically, you created a system that is functionally looking to generate profit by the number of people incarcerated. So by its very definition, you quit being about rehabilitation and just became about incarceration. Being for profit, you're also looking at, a situation in which you are responsible for the life of another human being, but you're doing so like you are managing resources for a business.
Right.
Which makes it very, at least bottom line, easy to, minimize healthcare, deny healthcare requests, try to, minimize food costs, minimize all of your costs in running this institution. without understanding that you're negatively harming people.
Right. And see, here's the thing, and Salvi is right up in here, and I'm liking that. Thank you. The cages, yeah, they're still happening because where do you put? It's not like that these are, boxes that they can just pick up and put outside. They installed these things, so they don't have space. The system that was 4 years ago, before Dum Dum got here, they've shut down. They've sold the property. They've closed the facility. They fired people.
Well, and that was still a situation that was already in trouble. Like, we didn't get cages just because Trump showed up. That was a problem already identified under Obama. It got significantly worse and more entrenched.
Right.
And then we added to that with increased arrests, increased, ICE presence, and, attempts to deport, all of which, turned this into a nightmare.
Right.
It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate, and that's probably the understatement of a millennium. Right. It's also a knot that is difficult to untangle.
Well, it's been the problem at the borders has been a problem for probably 40 years. We need to come up with something new, people. Children's homes, we've got children that were separated from parents. You don't know where the parents are. The child's 6 years old. How do you, who's your parent?
Well, and depending upon when they went into the system,
right?
Like you're talking, if for instance you were talking about a child that was 2 when they hit this problem, that is now 6 years old. Who remembers what from when they're 2?
Right.
Like, even 6-year-olds are going to struggle if it's only been a year. That's a significant chunk of a person's life. It's not like you are built for this at 6 years old, right, or 4 or 2 or etc. We horribly mishandled that.
Yeah,
and it is a tragedy.
Right.
Never to be minimized.
No. It is not a tragedy. It's an issue. It's a major issue. And then the department that is supposed to handle this, Health and Human Services, is the same department that runs foster care and is overloaded in foster care to the point that they now have roadside signs in West Virginia. Please, looking for foster parents, looking for foster parents, looking for foster parents. And this is nationwide that this is an issue. And then we're getting an influx of people that need to be cared for. Now, nobody's going to like my solution. Here's my solution. We have a lot of shut down hospitals that are designed to house and take care of people. We reactivated them for COVID. We need to do it too.
Yeah. I can certainly appreciate that. As long as those hospitals are still a safe environment. Because I know we do have older hospitals that have been shut down, and it was sort of like the Fayette County school system. It was an unfortunate, series of neglect that led to the shutdown of those facilities.
Well, we have many others outdated.
Right. Well, we have many others that are still in good physical shape. Even though as a functional hospital, no, that's not even a thing. You can't even begin on that.
Right. We need to be using it. I hate to say this, and I know it was a major, major problem during the 20s and 30s. And yes, I'm going back to the 1900s. We need to reopen the children's homes. We need to get those kids. The Border Patrol is not designed for children. They're designed for criminals.
Right.
We need to get them out of there.
Well, and moreover, we have to, and I get, Sullivan's point that parents send kids in hopes of a better life for that child. And I understand that. And points out that my grandfather immigrated in 1910 at age 12. And age 12 is an age in which someone has at least the basic comprehension to at least know who their parents are, to keep up with documents, etc. And at least, attempt to create, or contribute to a defense in court.
Right.
At the point in which we're setting toddlers on defense tables to answer, a criminal charge regarding illegal immigration, we've lost the plot. But I would caution that's a great big giant difference between sending a smaller child, one who's 6, 4, 2.
ABC was running film of a 2-year-old and human trafficking. Oh, we are past the point of human trafficking. We are at the point now that it's $1,000 to get them on a ladder over that wall, and if the parents can get that $1,000 and get it all set up for the coyotes, they're sending their children. So that begs me the question: where are they coming from? That begs me the question: what's our global community? Boom, there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Solivay, that is very common. That is very, very common. So we've got to get immigration, a new way of doing immigration. We got to get a new way of dealing with this problem, and that's going to have to be on a global scale. That includes putting our money where our mouth is, and that may be buying Arabic coffee instead of Colombian, and looking at where your products come from. Children Home Society, it worked. It worked. There was a same issue here.
Well, and we also have an unfortunate problem with, which again Solivay brings up, is where are people coming from? But we also have that in terms of what are people who live on our borders, as in they are frequent crossers. What is their actual involvement here? Like, we want to talk about this. We have immigration, illegal immigration from Mexico, but much more than that, we also have a lot of people for whom it's a turnstile.
Right.
They work in the U.S., they live in Mexico. They're not trying to move here. Right. They're very happy earning a U.S. salary, and paying a Mexican cost of living.
Right. Well, and then we have people, and this is they always paint the immigrants as, oh, they're bad for our country. They're bad. Really? There is an apple orchard in Washington that pays decent money every year for people to come pick apples. They've had, and I've followed up and went back because they keep updating their blog on how many Americans they've had. They've now had 5 in Washington apply to work there. So when you look at a patch of apples and you're looking at the price of those apples, or any fresh fruit coming out of California, you're paying to the immigrant problem. You're paying for people to risk their lives to come across the border to take jobs that Americans won't do. And that's the honest truth. That's the problem. Yeah. You did. Awesome.
But no, it's because, again, it forgets that, we in terms of talking about immigration, we want to talk about like it's an entirely brown people problem. Which, for those who bitch the most about immigration, it is a brown people problem. In terms of they don't want brown people in their country. When we're talking about, predominantly white European people coming to the U.S. and overstaying a visa, that's not the problem we tend to have with immigration. The same way we didn't have that in 1492 and all the way to current day. We didn't have a problem with Christopher Columbus coming, blah, 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 which granted wrong history, but regardless, we don't have a problem with white people coming to the U.S. illegally, killing people, taking land, blah, blah, blah. Our problem always goes back to, someone who is non-white.
Well, that's this century. Century before, we had a problem with Italians and Irish and, Oriental. And I say Oriental because it's that's the word that was used. Don't come after me. I know Asian Americans, and we need to pay attention and get them up. We wouldn't have a railroad system if it wasn't for Asian Americans. We wouldn't have interstates if it wasn't for Asian Americans. We wouldn't have a lot of things, but it's always an immigration problem for the United States, and I've never gotten this nor understood it. And I don't think and I will ever get this. If they can come here and they are willing to do the jobs and work, bring them. I ran a bar and restaurant in North Carolina. Now, granted, when I pulled into the parking lot, I could hear out my kitchen, La Punta's here. They knew it. I knew it. We were all fine with the meaning of that one. I have never met a harder working crew. I didn't have to worry about if the dishes were done. I didn't have to worry about if my orders were going out. I didn't have to worry to just know that if my floors were clean. Health department show up, no big deal. My place is spotless. For the exact reason that Sullivan's grandfather probably worked his butt to death and sent money back to his family. I didn't have a problem with it. I think the American businesses need to get with this, which means our government needs to get with this and give us a pathway.
Yeah. Well, and granted, to some degree, it is a paperwork problem. And again, returning to Sullivan's comment, but it isn't. Yeah, it is. That's where it's ultimately made into a problem is a paperwork problem. The reality is, though, you'll have a lot less of a problem with your paperwork. And as long as you look like your neighbors. And that's been a long-standing problem that we have, is that we tend to, focus in on race when we're, looking for illegal immigrants. Does create a long-standing problem in terms of people who are natural born, birth certificate, born here, Americans, facing a constant, never-ending, go back to where you came from.
Right. And here's the other thing with this, and immigrants, oh, they don't pay taxes. Yes, they do. They just don't get any of the benefits.
Very true. Yeah. And visas expire.
Right.
And it can often be very life upending. I know back in college we had a problem, which I think we did talk probably back in our blog talk days. So we'll go through this one again real quick. But we had an issue with payments of all stupid things, paying tuition. With the university, and what ultimately happened is we had whole groups of students every single semester who were effectively disenrolled from class, meaning that their student visa was no longer valid. They had to be put on a plane, sent back across an ocean to get there, resubmit, to come back to the U.S. and make get back into all of their classes and wait again for a check to clear. Ultimately, it was a super stupid and a super easy to solve problem. Literally, it ended up being, why not just use a credit card
Right.
Like, if you're gonna send students here, we know that there is a massive problem with the university accepting checks drawn on a foreign bank,
Mm-hmm.
and there is a secondary problem with getting students established with a United States bank account. Can we not just use credit cards
Mm-hmm.
just to make this all easier? Ultimately, what they did, and ultimately meant that students had a much better experience, and it completely eradicated an entire problem
Mm-hmm.
for them, as well as a massive amount of expense in sending people basically back and forth across an ocean
Mm-hmm.
just to apply for a piece of paperwork that fundamentally they were all going to be granted.
Mm-hmm.
Just because of a formality.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do that while you're illegally in the U.S.
Right.
And that's some of where my problems come in at with our current immigration system.
Right.
That if someone's already here, we need to make sure that before we deport, we actually look at the situation and go, are we deporting for a reason, or are we deporting as punishment?
Or paperwork.
As paperwork, yeah.
Yeah. See, and here's the other thing, and it's always, I think Congress needs to go get the plaque off of the Statue of Liberty and read it every. They say the Pledge of Allegiance, even the updated Pledge of Allegiance, again 1957 version. They should have to read every time the immigration bills come up. They should have to read and sign a loyalty card to what the Statue of Liberty says on her plaque.
And it's a complicated issue, and it disrupts families, and it upends lives. Um, More often than not, for people who are otherwise the kind of community members you want more of.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know how else to say that.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, if you're running your life like a decent human being, I understand if you're running a sex trafficking ring, or you're committing acts of violence and rape and etc. Get deport.
Mm-hmm.
Like, thanks, you had your chance, goodbye. But over paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also what leads a lot of people to basically get stuck
Mm-hmm.
in a expired visa situation, is that they are now facing a paper tiger.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of you're effectively, if you draw attention to yourself and try to correct it,
Right.
you are potentially, so to speak, signing the death warrant for your current life.
Right.
And I don't mean live or die. I mean, like, the life you have built and established and the things that you have accumulated.
Mm-hmm.
That there is no, like, pause button
Mm-hmm.
in this situation for you to be able to follow the letter of the law
Mm-hmm.
and fix this situation without completely upending the life you're trying to create and have.
Yeah. Yes, it is $10,000. That's a small case. I know a family that spent $50,000, and that was like 10 years ago, to fix things, and one of them was a dreamer. And now our dreamers are trying to figure out what they're going to do. Dreamers, and we're going to have a very large dreamer population with our border crisis. Very large dreamer situation.
Oh, most definitely. And especially if you're talking about, the situation in which, if we're going to continue putting, kids in custody, and especially if we're not going to manage that appropriately, because a lot of those kids were put into situations with adults and without supervision, even when they were in a age segregated population, that could ultimately end up with not even a rape, but just a simple, person A meets person B, and well, nature took its course,
Mm-hmm.
and next thing you know, there's a baby.
Yep. And it's a shame, and it's a racket, and I see it keep going up and being a problem, and it is all over the place. And we're expecting people who don't speak our language, don't understand our laws, to understand that, oh, in 2 years you have to come back to me and let me do this again for you, or in 4 years you have to no. Both sides of my grandparents immigrated into this country through New York. It was a whole system. And one of them came with her mother and father, and the mother was sick, and literally the mother stayed there on Ellis Island for almost 6 months before they would let her into the country. They weren't shipping her back on a ship back to Romania.
And I'm not saying we have I'm personally not saying I have all the answers. I'm just saying we have a problem that is mostly built around paper.
Right.
And we have that in many government programs.
We do.
And a lot of this is built with severe penalties created by people who, one, will never face those penalties, and moreover don't understand the true cost of those penalties.
And here's the other thing. We already had a system that worked. We had a lovely system that worked during the 1800s up until 1910. Congratulations. I'm glad she was able to do that. Up until 1910, when nationalism became an issue. And every time nationalism becomes an issue, we have immigration issues. We had a lovely system. Guys, if you ever go to New York, go look at Ellis Island, listen to the system. You show up, you're not going to have a visa. We now have the ability to do visas. Your name gets wrote on the page. Doesn't matter if it's your real name or a name that they add to you. Hi, Rachel.
Rachel.
Or change. And then you go through the process. We need to get back to that system.
And not one that's fundamentally built on trying to deport as many people as possible. Because ultimately that's what we have now.
Right. Yeah. So we're going to have to wrap this up. I know Rachel just got here. I hope you watched the replay, Rachel. Now, there is a story that I am looking into deeper, and it has to do with the tulip. And we will be talking about that on Tuesday.
All right.
Yes. All right, y'all. Have a great evening. Tomorrow is Power Saturday. Be sure, if you want an appointment, to go ahead and book it. Get it in there. Of course, my 15-minute readings are on sale for $20. That is the cheapest you will get me. And then, of course, we have our Patreon members who get a discount on my readings. So they can even get it cheaper. And literally, the Patreon pulls it together.
Oh, yeah. And it's worth it just for the discount on Power Saturday.
Right.
Like, we did the math. It literally will pay for itself. Just one phone call. But we do want to thank our Patreon supporters. We love our baristas. Beverly Walker, Mika G, Kathy, Mary Winfield, Brenda Bryant, and Ashley Guest. If you'd like to learn more about becoming a Patreon or about us and the show, please visit pcspnetwork.com.
All right, y'all. Y'all have a great evening. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your family. Wash your hands. Wear your mask. And if you're in Texas, please recall Ted Cruz. Bye, y'all.
Bye. And happy birthday, Eve, says Brenda.
Thank you, Brenda.